Hi everyone, welcome back to Ukulele Next Steps with me, Matt Stead. In today's video, we're going to be exploring Clawhammer Ukulele. We're going to look at what it is, how to play it, and we're going to go into a lot of detail on right hand technique. Then we're going to learn a lovely old time piece of music, Wildwood Flower by the Carter family. Let's take a look. So clawhammer is an old banjo technique which in recent years people have started transferring over onto other instruments like guitar and ukulele. Now on the banjo there's a string nearest your nose which is used for droning on. It's like the thumb is constantly hitting this background drone whilst the other fingers are playing a melody. Hear it there? And we can actually replicate that on the ukulele perfectly because our ukulele has one of the highest pitch strings on the top here nearest our nose, the high G string. Now that doesn't mean that you can't play clawhammer ukulele with a low G uke. It will work and the technique is going to be exactly identical. I personally prefer the sound of the droning of a high G string just because it's a bit less boomy and it blends in with the other notes more easily. But if you only have a low G ukulele, you can still play along with this clawhammer style. So the basis of clawhammer is all about this thing called the bum-ditty. Sometimes it's referred to as a tick-tocker or even clawhammer. It sounds like this. Okay, bum-ditty, 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 bum-ditty. Now don't worry about the technique involved. I'm going to break down all three parts of that strum and show you how to do it. But that is the basis of clawhammer. It's like we're putting 3 strokes into where you would normally have 2. The first one is longer than the next 2. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a... But again, don't worry, we'll go into the nitty-gritty of this in just a minute. But just as an example, see if you can hear the bum-ditties in this piece of music. Just a really simple start to Wildwood Flower. Bum-ditty, 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 bum-ditty. And those bum-ditties, that stroke, that's the essence of clawhammer. So let's work out how to do it. So let's break down each of those 3 components. We have the bum, followed by the dit and the T. Bum, ditty. Now let's just concern ourselves with that first stroke, this bum. We're going to look at it in a lot of detail because there's lots more going on here than it looks. We need to get the technique really right. So first of all, let's just think about our right hand position. I want you to take your hand and hold it out, your right hand, or whichever one you're going to use for picking. If you're left-handed, you can use your left. And just let all the tension go out of your fingers. Let your 4 fingers curl up almost into a fist. Now, it's not quite a tight fist. If I put my hand like this, can you see there's daylight? It's not tight like this. There's a little bit of daylight. So these 3 are curved up. Notice that this finger is slightly protruding. Okay, it's not way out like this and it's not tucked down with the others. It's just slightly protruding. And that's really important. These 3 want to stay out the way. We're basically going to do nothing with these 3. It's all about this one. Now you notice I've got a bit of a nail on my finger. You don't need a nail at all. You can just use you can just use a short nail to do this technique. It will work just as fine. Okay. So that's our hand position that we're going to keep roughly throughout all of this process. Notice one other thing. The thumb I try and keep upwards, not tight upwards, but just relaxed in a position, almost like I'm thumbing, trying to hitch a lift. And we want that to stay like that the whole time. If you ever find it closing up like this, try to put it back up here. Okay. So notice now, it's almost like we've got this plectrum. You can think of it almost like a plectrum or a pick on a guitar, which is the nail side of our index finger. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick, let's just pick the open A string with the nail side of that index finger. Noticing that these 3 are just curled up, sitting out of the way. Now I'm going to come in really close because there's a couple of really important things about this first part of the pattern. Notice that as I hit that A string, that my arm and hand are moving in towards the uke. If I kept going, I might even get a bit of a knocking sound as I come in. My hand is moving down slightly, but if I go this way, notice that my arm and hand are moving in towards the string. It's almost like this index finger is picking the string and moving in towards the ukulele. That's really crucial. It's the nail side of that finger that's picking the string. The reason that's crucial is because clawhammer is all about this attack of the ukulele, or originally the banjo, and we need to replicate that. So I don't want your hand moving down like this when you pick that note. I want it moving in towards the ukulele. If we do go down and pick that note, our hand is way out of position for the next part, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. And another important thing, notice that my thumb is resting roughly on top of the G string after I pick that note. And again, that's really crucial that we keep this hand in this kind of loose claw shape that I was showing you earlier. It's partly where the clawhammer gets its name, okay? So as you pick that A string, just to practice it, allow that thumb to just rest on the G string, come in towards the ukulele, and just practice picking. Doesn't have to be in time with me. And that's our first part of the strum. Now, if that melody note was to fall on a different string, we would do exactly the same thing, only we would aim this index finger towards a different string. So I could hit the E string with that index finger. Notice my thumb is still roughly landing on that G string. And I'm coming in towards the uke, and that allows me to just hit the E string without accidentally hitting two strings, okay? So just try that, just hitting that E string. And I could try exactly the same thing up here on the C string. So let's practice that. Let's play through our C major scale. If you're not sure how to play a C major scale, I'll talk you through it. And we're just going to use this claw technique of just hitting the strings with the nail side of our index finger, keeping that rough shape as we go. So we're going to play an open C string, second fret of the C string for D, an open E string, keep that claw shape, an F note first fret, G note third fret, A note open, bottom string nearest the floor open, a B note second fret, and a high C third fret. So a nice way to practice through just this first part of the strum is to play through that C major scale. And as you do, concentrate on coming in towards the uke, hitting the string with the nail side of that index finger and resting that thumb on this high G string. And you might think, whoa, that's a lot of information just on one pick, one part of the clawhammer strum. But this is the thing, getting those shapes and the technique and thinking about how to do it perfectly is really important. And that's why a lot of people struggle with clawhammer. So take your time to get that right in terms of coming in towards the uke, nail side coming down, thumb resting on top. And let's have a look at the next part of the strum. Okay, so that's the bum of our bum ditty sorted. Let's have a look at the dit, the next part. And that's quite simply a brush down with the index finger over all the strings. This time I am moving my arm downwards rather than in. So I've come in for the bum, and this bit goes down. Bum, dit, bum, dit, bum, dit. Now, the crucial thing about this is to keep it relatively loose, not in terms of hand shape, just in terms of the attack on the string. Don't feel that you need to strum past all four strings perfectly. This only has to be a rough downward attack of the strings. And that's where a lot of people struggle on this. They try to make it too clean, like. But really, when you're playing at speed, can you see how it's just a very quick light brush? So it doesn't even really matter if you don't hit all 4 of the strings. You're just brushing down with the nail side of that index finger over 2 or 3 strings, coming downwards. But the absolute crucial thing about this part of the strum sets up the last part, and that's this thumb. This is a really important part. As you come down, let's just do it with open strings. It's really crucial that that thumb rests on the G string. Now notice as I rest, it's not just kind of very lightly sitting on top of the G string there. Can you actually see there's actually a line in the flesh of my thumb where I'm actually digging in. Not so much it's painful, but just enough that my thumb is caught on the string there. And that's really important because the last part of this clawhammer strum is just to take away the thumb and it produces a note. Can you hear that? Now, if that thumb isn't resting quite tightly against that G string, when I take away my thumb, there's not really a noise. So be really conscious of that. As you do this middle part of the strum down, really try and rest that thumb quite firmly on the G string. So if we put that together with the bum, we have the inward attack of the index finger for the bum, and I'm going to hit the A string, whoops, like this, and then I'm going to follow it with this downward strum here. So bum, dit, in, down, in, down, in, down, in, down, in, down. Okay, so perhaps pause the video at this point. Just practice that. Make sure you're really comfortable with that. Make sure you're getting a clear note off that index finger coming down onto the string, and then a very light strum coming down, thumb resting on top of that G string. Okay, so we've got our bum, we've got our dit, and now for the T, the last part, all we need to do is take our thumb away, and as we do, we very lightly pick that open G string on the top. So I come in, down, and out. Now there's loads of crucial things, isn't there? For something so simple, there's a lot to think about, isn't there? And this really is crucial. That T coming out with the thumb, it's really important that you come out from the ukulele and not down. So we don't want to come down, we want to come out. The reason for that is it creates this nice in and out motion, which allows you to play it quite quickly, because I'm coming in on the first part, I'm going down on the next part, and I'm coming out on the final part, which of course then allows me to come in, down, and out. I can repeat in, down, out. Notice another really important thing, that because I gripped that G string relatively tightly, as I pull out, my thumb doesn't need to pick the string like this. We want to keep that rough claw shape the whole time we're doing this claw hammer. What we don't want is this. We don't want that last bit to be a down pick of the thumb and it closing up, because then we haven't got that nice claw for the next attack. We want it like this the whole time. So concentrate, imagining you're hitching that lift on keeping that thumb out the whole time. Let's put that together really slowly. I'm just attacking the A string for the bum, strumming down lightly, catching the thumb and pulling it away. We have bum, ditty, in, down, out, bum, ditty. Again, just pause the video and take your time to practice that round and round, something like this. So, bum, ditty, bum, ditty, bum, ditty, bum, ditty. After you've practiced that hitting the A string, try it on a different string. Try and attack the open E string and and following it with your ditty. It's a bit more difficult, and again, that's the reason we're attacking in towards the uke rather than down. One of the reasons. It stops you playing two notes. You don't want to accidentally hit two notes. We're just aiming just for that E string. Might take a bit of practice just getting that first and following it with the ditty. Notice that the ditty part is nice and light. We could do exactly the same thing on the C string. Now, a really nice way to practice this is to take that C major scale we were doing earlier, open C, and I'm going to attack each of these notes with the nail of my index finger. Second fret for D, open E, first fret for F, third fret for G, open A, second fret for B, and third fret for C. Try playing through that scale but adding your ditties in like this. So let's put this into context now to show you how you could actually use this as part of a song. There's two main ways really of using clawhammer. The first, and we're going to look at this in a bit more detail next week, is to use it as an accompaniment. So say I was strumming and singing a song, I'll Fly Away for instance. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. Rather than strumming that song, I could use that constant picking pattern. I'm just playing a C chord and I can attack with that clawhammer pick. Clawhammer, bum-ditty, 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 bum. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. So that's kind of an accompaniment style. Next week we'll look at how to make that more interesting with hammer-ons and varying which string we attack, but that's one way of using it. More common than that is to use it in an almost chord melody style way, where we have a strong melody picked out with the index finger. And where we would normally do chords in a chord melody, we're going to do the ditty of the clawhammer. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of music, Wildwood Flower by the Carter family, and I'm going to show you this way of doing it. And we're actually going to have a look at an arrangement. Now I've written out the tabs for this for you. This is available as a downloadable PDF, so you might find it easier to actually follow the link in the description to a free Dropbox version of this, so you can download and or print it. I will put this on the screen as we go, but it's much easier if you have your own version that you can follow along with. So the melody note when we play clawhammer is picked out with that index finger doing the attacking of the strings. So you're going to play down in towards the ukulele, hit the relevant string and the relevant note using your left hand. So for instance, that first measure, we have a 0 on the E string and a 1 on the E string. That's an E and an F. So those are your bums, no laughing. Those are your bums of your bum ditty. We're not going to add any ditties in at the moment. We're just going to practice the melody on its own. So for instance, the first couple of measures will sound like this. Off, 1, 3, off, 3, off, 1, off, 2, off, 2, off, off. Okay, first of all, notice that as I play through that melody, that my hand is keeping in that claw shape. I'm trying to keep that thumb up here. It's not closing down, hopefully. It's staying up here, resting roughly on the G string, and I'm hitting in towards the ukulele as I hit each of those notes with the nail side of my index finger coming down. I haven't bothered to show crotchets, quavers, etc. I've just done a very basic tab. In terms of the timing, this intro part, we always have 2 quick notes followed by a slow note, or 2 short notes followed by a long note if you like. So in terms of the rhythm, it's quick, quick, long, quick, quick, long, quick, quick, long, quick, quick, long, long, long. Okay, so let's try playing through that then. So we have off 1, 3 on the E string. Then we have 0, 3 on the A string, open E. Then we have 1, 0 on the E string, 2 on the C string, open E string, 2 on the C string, and off on the C, off on the E, and off on the C. Practice putting that first part together. It should sound like this. 2, 3, 4. Okay. Notice then we've got a repeat, so we go back to the start and we do it again. Now this time, when we hit this note, we hit the second repeat, not the first repeat. So this measure here, we only ever play this once. So the first time through, da 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 da. Then we go back to the top, da 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 da. Da 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 da, and skip to here, da. Okay, that's the first part of the song. Let's have a look at the B section. So we've already played the open C, the first part of the second repeat. So let's have a look from where we've got those 2 3s. We've got a 3 on the E string, followed by a 3 on the A string. Because that's followed by a high E note up here, that's 7 on the A string. The easiest thing is to do like a mini bar on the E and the A strings for those 2 3s. So you're going to pick the 3rd fret of the E string, 3rd fret of the A string, and then reach up with your little finger up to that 7th fret. Okay, and then the next bit we can do 7, 5 with this finger, back to 3 here. Okay, so from the start of that repeat, from the 3s, ignore the 0 before, we have 3, 3, 7, 7, 5, back to 3. Okay, then we have that 3, 2 off, C, B, A, and I'm just going to move this index finger back. Okay, then we have 3 off, 3 on the E string, hit the open C string, hit the 3 again. Okay, so if I put that all together, it'll sound something like this. Notice that I'm picking all of these notes with that nail side of this index, keeping that claw shape, keeping that thumb up. It'll sound like this. So perhaps pause the video, have a little go at that part, make sure you're really comfortable with it, and then let's just finish off the melody. So to finish off, this bit's very similar to the first line. I'm looking at the last 2 notes of the 3rd line now. I have a C and a D, that's a 0, 2 on the C string. Then we have 2 open E's at the start of the next line. 0, 3, E, G. And then off for an open E, 2nd fret of the C string, open E, 2nd fret of the C string, and off. So starting from the last 2 notes of the 3rd line, it will sound like this. Let's try putting that all together. We'll try the whole thing, just the melody. Just remember, as with all my videos, that everyone's different. So if you're not ready to play this melody all the way through, just take your time and work on it at your own pace. Pause the video, print off the sheet and get really comfortable with it. And when you've got that, come back and we can have a little playthrough together. But I'll just play through the whole thing, just the melody only, just so you can get a feel for it. Remember, the first line and a half we're going to repeat twice, okay, because we have that little repeat note. And remember, all of these notes are our bums of bum-ditty. We've not put the ditties in yet, so we're going to tag each of these notes with that index finger coming in towards the ukulele. Try and keep that shape as we go. It'll sound something like this. I'll count in 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. Back to the top. Second repeat. 3 3. Reach up. Last bit. 0 2. There's the lovely melody to Wildwood Flower. Now the next bit's easier than it seems. All we've got to do is add those ditties in. Let's take a look at how to do it and we'll have a look at the second sheet. Your second downloadable and printable PDF has the ditties written in now. Don't worry about how to play these. I'm going to show you exactly how in just a minute. Now if we have a look at one of these out up large, it will look something like this. The number before the arrow represents the melody note, which we're already hitting. That's the bit we've already practiced. That's the bum coming down, hitting the melody note with your index finger. The arrow represents the dit. That's the second part of the strum where we're brushing down over the strings with our index finger. And the 0 represents touching the G string and pulling off with your thumb. So I'll keep that on the screen for you. Now I'm going to finger two strings here at the 3rd fret. Don't worry about why for now. The tablature looks like this, but I'll explain why in a minute. Now let's just have a look at that one more time then. So the 3 is telling you to play the 3rd fret of the E string, and the bum is when our index finger comes in and hits that melody note. The dit is our strum down. And the 0 is taking away the thumb and picking that G string. So all together, bum, ditty, bum, ditty, bum, ditty, bum, ditty. Okay. The reason it's a 0 where we take away our thumb and hit the G string is purely because when we play a C chord, which this one is based off, notice that the G string is open. If I was playing a chord like an F, for instance, where I'm playing the 2nd fret, the number after the arrow would say a 2. But you don't need to worry about that. If you're playing the right chord, as you'll see in just a minute, you don't need to worry at all. The main thing is whenever you see an arrow, know that the note before it is the bum, the arrow is the dit, and the number after it is the T. Okay. Now notice above the ditties, I've drawn a chord box in blue. So for instance, on the 2nd measure, we have a chord box telling you to play this shape, which is 2 fingers, doesn't really matter which ones, I use my 3rd and 4th fingers, playing the 3rd fret of the E and the A string. Now the reason that's important is when we strum our ditty, especially the down strum part, that's representing a chord like we would in chord melody. So after I've hit that 0 1 3 at the start, when I do the ditty, I hold down 2 fingers. And the reason is that's giving the sound of a C chord, because if you're strumming that and singing that song at that point, it would be a C chord. I will dance, I will sing. So we need to represent that when we're doing these ditties. So pay attention to that if you can. So the first 2 measures, we're going to play 0 1 on the E string, E and F, and that's with our bum. So with our bum, Sorry, you know what I mean. That's our bum, which is our melody note coming down with our index finger. So 0, 1. Then we go to third finger. And as we do the ditty, make sure you're holding 2 fingers down, just like the chord box. So we have a melody, and in the gap where we're putting the ditty, we have the sound of a chord. That's exactly how this process is going to work in these chord melody arrangements. The ditty part, you're kind of representing the sound of a chord, but you're also having that nice little kind of drone sound on that G string, which really gives it a thicker kind of claw hammer sound. So we're going to follow that process the whole time along. Whenever there's a new chord, so for instance, if you have a look on the third line down, there's an F chord. We know it's an F because there's an F written, right? So whenever we do the ditty in that part, we're going to make sure we hold down an F chord, and we follow that process the whole way along. So if we have a look at the next phrase of the first line, so we're going to start with the last 2 notes of the second measure, which is an A and C, or 0 and 3 on the A string. Then we hit an open E for the bum, and the ditty, make sure you have that C shape down, just like we've got with the chord box. And the reason that's important is if we didn't hold that C chord down, when we do the ditty, we have the sound of a C6 chord, which is no fingers. But we want the sound of a C chord. Okay, so that's really important. Keep holding down whichever chord shape is shown. So that makes the first 2 phrases, the first 2.5 measures, sound like this. Okay, so I'm playing off 1, 3, adding the C shape, off 3, I just lift this finger off, take that one away for E. Okay, and that's given us that claw hammer sound with the right chords as well. By the way, just a quick explanation. The reason the first C chord box looks like this, whereas the second one looks like this, is just because the first chord that we play involves this G note here. And it's easier just to keep it held down than take it away for the chord part. So that's the reason that's there. In the second measure, it's just a normal C. Okay. Then let's have a look at the last phrase then of this first line. We're going to look at the last 2 notes of the third measure. That's 1, 0, F, E. Then the last measure, we have a G7 chord. So when we do the ditty, we want a G7 chord shape down, right? As it shows you in the box. Okay. Now it's easier to put that chord shape down at the start of that measure rather than hitting a note and then adding it in for the ditty. So I play this 1, 0 from the measure before, F, E. And then when I play this note here, I put my G7 down and follow it with a ditty. So 1, off, 2, ditty. Notice how we're getting the sound of that G7 chord. And then to finish off the last 2 notes of that measure, we have an E, off, 2, which is a D. And then the chord is a C, so we're going to keep that C chord down right from the start of the measure, and we're going to hit a C note ditty, E note ditty, C note ditty. Okay, so I'm going to play that whole first line through for you. If you're not ready yet, if you're still practicing, just have a listen to give you an idea. If you feel ready, you can have a play along. 2, 3, 4. And again. That's it. So that's the verse already done. That's absolutely excellent. And remember, even if you haven't got that perfectly straight away, as long as you're getting the principles, you can take away and slowly work on it. So the B section, starts with that. Remember when we did the melody, we did a little mini bar of the 3rd fret. We're going to ignore that first note, that one there, because that's the last note of the last phrase. We've already played that. So we're going to do this mini bar over the 3rd fret. That will allow us to do those 2 melody notes. And then we're going to reach up with our little finger to the 7th fret up here and do a ditty. Notice that the chord box, there's a little 7 to indicate that your finger's on the 7th fret up here. Now you might think, well, the 7th fret for the A string, that's not a C chord, is it? A C chord's here. But remember, the notes that make up a C chord are C, E, G, and then because we've got 4 strings on our ukulele, we normally repeat the C note here, a high C. But this is a perfectly valid C because this note here is an E. So we have C, E, G, and another E. So believe it or not, that's a perfectly valid C chord. And we're going to hit the bum of the bum-ditty and add the ditty in. So the start of the B section will sound like this. 3, 3, 7, ditty. Okay. Then we just track back 7, 5 to 3 and we do a ditty. Okay. And then 3, 2. Now here the chord changes. Do you see there's an F chord? So when we do this open A, if I strum down with no fingers, it wouldn't work because I'd have the sound of a C6 chord, but we want the sound of an F. So after we hit that 3, 2, okay, at the end of the first measure of this line, I put down an F chord at the start of the next measure, hit the open A, and then I can do my ditty. And that gives me the sound of a ditty on an F chord. Isn't that lovely? So let's piece that together with the bit that we were just doing from this mini bar here. So starting at the B section, we've got 3, 3, 7 ditty, 7, 5, 3, ditty, 3 off, 3, 2, sorry, F chord, hit the A, and ditty. Okay. Now it's good practice to keep that F down for the whole measure. So when we hit the next 2 notes, just use your little finger for 3 off. And then we go back to this G note and follow the chord box. We've got 2 fingers down just like the start. So when we ditty, we have the sound of a C chord. So again, just to get this right, I'm going to go through the whole of the B section up to that point now. I'm going to slow things down really slow here so you can see what's going on. So I'm starting with that mini bar and the 2 3s. Okay, so I hit those 2 3s up to the 7th fret for the bum and ditty. 7, 5 as a bum. 3, hit the ditty. 3, 2. Open A is a bum, but add the F chord. Ditty. 3 off on the A string. And then back to this double C, this kind of position here. Hit the G, 3. Hit the C string. Back to the E string. That's it. That's the whole of that B section. And then to finish it off, we've got a phrase similar to the start again. I have the last 2 notes of the penultimate line, which is 0, 2, C, D. Then I have 2 open E's followed by a ditty, but notice that the chord shape is a C. Another one. And then I have an E, G. No ditty there, we're going to let that hang. And then finally, a G7 chord with a D bum note, ditty. And just the last 3 notes off 2, that's E, D. And then the final measure, rather than adding a ditty, because it's kind of like it feels like the song wants to stop, we're just going to play the top 2 strings, G and C open. So it gives you that finality, because the string that really stands out is that low C, and it feels finished. So if I play through from the last 2 notes of the penultimate line, it will sound like this, the off to CD to start. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is play the whole thing through very slowly. If you feel ready at this point, and don't worry if you're not, we've covered a lot, haven't we, very quickly, see if you can play along. If you don't feel ready yet, have a look with what's happening with my left hand and my right hand and see if you can piece together what's happening in your mind to help you work out how to do this bum-ditty, this clawhammer style. And remember, with these videos, it's all about the process. Even if you're just practicing that bum-ditty I showed at the start, that can be enough to get you started on your clawhammer journey. And then when you're more confident, you can piece this together. But let's just have a go. 2, 3, 4. Back to the start. Second repeat, mini bar, bottom line, okay. Now finally a bit more up tempo, just so you can get a feel for how it can sound a little bit faster. 2, 3, 4. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as a bit of an introduction into clawhammer style playing. And I can't say this enough, if that's too much at the moment, there was a lot of information quite quickly, but I wanted to really give you a piece to get stuck into. If it's too much, just concentrate on the first part of the video where we're looking at that basic bum-ditty technique. Really concentrate on keeping that hand shape the whole time, coming in towards the uke for the bum, down for the dits, and pulling out for the T. Bum-ditty, bum-ditty, bum. Because that's the important thing. Once you've got that process, you can play all these kind of different types of clawhammer tunes. And it will come, honestly. Take your time with it. It will come. Next week, we'll look at how to use this kind of clawhammer technique as a kind of accompaniment to singing or playing along with somebody else. So we'll look into a bit more depth with that.